INFJs are frequently blind to their own strengths. This blindness is not due to a lack of capacity or value, but rather an intricate web of internal tendencies, external feedback, and deeply ingrained psychological patterns. INFJs have a dominant cognitive function called introverted intuition, which works in subtle ways. Introverted intuition processes information beneath the surface, generating insights, patterns, and future-oriented perspectives. Because this process is internal and largely silent, INFJs can find it difficult to articulate or even recognize the full extent of what they know or perceive. Their insights often arrive in flashes or gut feelings, not through linear reasoning, which can make them seem intangible or unprovable, even to themselves. As a result, INFJs may dismiss their own intuitive brilliance as vague or baseless. INFJs also have an auxiliary function, extrovert feeling, which drives them to prioritize harmony, connection, and the emotional needs of others. INFJs are constantly tuned into the external emotional climate, often adapting themselves to meet the expectations of those around them. This makes them deeply compassionate and socially adept, but can also cause them to place their self-worth in the hands of others. When their validation comes externally, they may overlook their inner world and fail to appreciate how powerful it is. Their attention is so often outward-facing, concerned with making others feel seen and understood, that they don't leave enough space to reflect on how much they themselves are contributing to the emotional well-being and growth of others. INFJs tend to set impossibly high standards for themselves. Their idealism drives them toward perfection, and anything less than their envisioned potential feels like a failure. This relentless self-critique can cloud their awareness of the progress they've made or the impact they're already having. Even when they're excelling, they may downplay it, always feeling they should be doing more. The disconnect between their vision of how things should be and how things are creates a constant sense of falling short, even in moments of excellence. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. INFJs also have a complex relationship with visibility. Though they are capable of profound insight and leadership, they are often reluctant to step fully into the spotlight. They prefer to work behind the scenes, guiding others subtly or influencing change through quiet persistence. Because they're not always overtly recognized or praised, they can internalize the belief that they are not doing enough or that their strengths are ordinary. But their power often lies precisely in the fact that their presence doesn't demand attention. It invites transformation. They are the kind of people who gently reframe someone's worldview with a single conversation, or who silently hold space in a way that heals. Their capacity for empathy, too, can obscure their self-awareness. INFJs are so deeply attuned to others that they can lose themselves in other people's emotions, perspectives, and needs. This merging can lead to an identity diffusion, where they become uncertain about where others end and they begin. In this blurred emotional landscape, recognizing and claiming their own unique gifts becomes even more challenging. It's not that they don't have strengths, it's that they are constantly focused on everyone else's. There is also a cultural element at play. Many INFJs are socialized to believe that the traits they excel at, empathy, depth, intuition, inner vision, are not as valuable as more extroverted or tangible forms of success. The modern world tends to reward visibility, speed, and external metrics of achievement, while INFJs operate best in slow, rich, and often invisible layers of meaning. When their strengths don't align with societal benchmarks, they may conclude that they don't have any at all. This blindness to their own superpowers runs deep in the INFJ psyche. It's almost archetypal, woven into the way they move through the world. INFJs are often drawn to roles of mentorship, advocacy, or healing, yet they may feel more like imposters than guides. This sense of being not enough persists even in the face of tangible evidence to the contrary. A student might tell them they changed their life. A friend might say they felt seen for the first time. A partner might feel unconditionally understood. Still, the INFJ quietly wonders if they've done anything meaningful at all. Another reason they are blind to their own superpowers lies in how their gifts function so effortlessly. Their intuition connects dots that others don't even know exist. Their empathy creates emotional safe havens wherever they go. Their ability to hold paradox, to see both suffering and beauty, complexity and clarity, feels natural to them. Because it comes so easily, they assume it must not be special. They confuse ease with insignificance. They think, if I can do this without trying, surely everyone else can too. But the truth is, very few people operate on the level they do. The INFJ's mind is like a deep well, filled with water that nourishes others, even as the INFJ stands unaware of the thirst they're quenching. There's also the stories they tell themselves about who they are. Many INFJs grow up feeling different, emotionally complex, and perceptive in ways that are hard to explain. If their environment doesn't affirm these qualities, they can start to feel like outsiders. This can create a lifelong habit of second-guessing their perceptions and downplaying their instincts. If no one reflects their gifts back to them, they begin to believe the mirror is broken. They learn to hide their depth, to edit their emotional expression, and to seek approval through service instead of authenticity. Over time, they forget what they are truly capable of, mistaking their protective mask for their true self. This disconnection from self is amplified by their tertiary introverted thinking, which can foster an inner critic that demands logic, proof, and perfection. INFJs may question their insights because they can't always explain them rationally. They feel a truth deeply in their bones, but when they can't support it with evidence, they mistrust it. This internal skepticism can become corrosive, slowly eroding their faith in their own mind and heart. They know things, but they don't always know how they know, and that gap becomes a source of shame rather than pride. The INFJ's shadow, the unconscious aspects of their personality that they tend to suppress or ignore, plays a significant role here too. While they are naturally inclined toward gentleness, idealism, and support, their shadow contains more assertive, even aggressive qualities, clarity, power, boldness, and self-trust. When INFJs fail to integrate these aspects, they may project them onto others or deny that they possess such traits at all. This leads to a distorted self-image, where their gentleness is seen as weakness and their compassion as naivete. They do not see their softness as strength, nor their subtlety as power. Relationships also shape this blindness. INFJs often attract people who are in pain, in need, or emotionally underdeveloped. Because INFJs are natural healers, they become emotional anchors, constantly giving more than they receive. If they're not careful, this dynamic becomes normalized. They become the one who listens, who adjusts, who understands, while their own needs and talents are minimized. Over time, this reinforces the idea that their worth is tied to how well they can support others, not in how deeply they themselves shine. They may not even realize how powerful their presence is because so much of it is poured outward, quietly holding up everyone around them. Even their spiritual or philosophical tendencies can mask their gifts. INFJs often possess a deep yearning to serve a higher purpose, to be part of something transcendent. This can be a beautiful calling, but it can also drive them to overlook the sacredness of their ordinary self. They get lost in the future, in the mission, in the longing to become something more, and forget that they already are something extraordinary. They're often more focused on who they might become than on honoring who they already are. INFJs rarely recognize how powerful they are because their power doesn't look like the world's definition of power. It doesn't dominate, control, or declare. It moves like water, soft, essential, and unstoppable. They will only begin to see their superpowers when they allow themselves to stop diminishing what comes naturally, when they realize that the ease with which they touch others, perceive patterns, or understand emotions is the mark of a gift, not the absence of one. They are not broken or invisible. They are rare and radiant, shining in a spectrum most people aren't equipped to see, including themselves. INFJs often feel things intensely, perceive things deeply, and think in layers that stretch far beyond the surface. From a young age, they may have been told to lighten up, stop overthinking, or be more realistic. This invalidation teaches them that their natural way of being sensitive, introspective, visionary, is something to suppress rather than embrace. They internalize the belief that their sensitivity is a flaw rather than the antenna that connects them to the emotional and energetic undercurrents others can't access. They don't see their depth as extraordinary because they've been taught to distrust it. INFJ's nature is to withdraw, observe, and absorb. In social spaces, they often choose to listen rather than speak, to support rather than lead, unless called upon with sincerity. This creates a pattern where their most powerful contributions are made in quiet ways, in private conversations, silent encouragements, or behind-the-scenes advocacy. Over time, this reinforces the false narrative that they are not as impactful as more outwardly expressive people. The reality is, they're often the quiet force that holds the whole structure together. People don't notice it until it's gone. Much of their power is long-term. INFJs plant seeds, often without knowing it. A single conversation, a gesture of belief, a moment of presence, it can ripple through someone's life for years. But INFJs rarely witness those ripples. They're not around for the transformation that happens later. This time delay between action and visible result makes them underestimate their influence. Because their gifts operate beneath the surface, they don't receive the immediate feedback that more action-oriented types do. So they conclude that nothing has changed, that they didn't make a difference, that maybe they aren't gifted at all. INFJs also have an intense moral compass and a drive to be authentic. But authenticity for them isn't mere acting. It's sacred. They are constantly reflecting on whether they are living in alignment with their purpose, whether they are truly being of service, whether their life has meaning. When they feel off course, they don't shrug it off, they ache. This deep sense of responsibility can be beautiful, but it also keeps them from recognizing the everyday ways they embody their purpose already. They are so focused on becoming the person they believe they should be that they often overlook the truth of who they already are. Someone profoundly gifted with the ability to see into the soul of things. Another subtle but important reason INFJs are blind to their superpowers is that they don't want to need them. INFJs often go through life feeling that if they reveal the full extent of their insight, it will isolate them further. They're already different, already hard to explain. Their ability to read people's emotional and psychological states, sometimes before the person is even aware of it themselves, can feel alienating. They may downplay or disown their intuitive accuracy just to feel more normal, more relatable. They hide their inner knowing, not because they don't trust it, but because they fear the cost of standing too far outside the crowd. Many INFJs don't fear failure nearly as much as they fear their own potential. They fear what might happen if they fully claim their voice, their insight, their quiet power. Would they lose connection? Would people recoil? Would they be too much? Too intense? Too different? So they shrink, not because they lack greatness, but because they have so much of it that it frightens them. They dilute themselves to stay close to others, not realizing that what people need most is their undiluted self. One of the most defining aspects of the INFJ experience is the way they absorb and internalize the emotional atmosphere around them. They don't just observe feelings, they become them. They walk into a room and immediately sense what isn't being said, often more clearly than what is. They can intuit grief masked by a smile, tension beneath politeness, shame under bravado. But this gift, this ability to feel what others feel, becomes a curse when they don't have a solid emotional boundary. Over time, INFJs may confuse their own emotions with those they've absorbed. They carry other people's pain like it's their own, and in the weight of that burden, they lose track of their inner compass. How can they see themselves clearly when they are holding the emotional stories of everyone around them? This emotional shape-shifting makes INFJs powerful connectors, but it also creates a type of psychic fog. They forget where their light begins and ends. Their intuitive knowing becomes tangled in the noise of other people's expectations, traumas, and projections. They are often told that they are wise beyond their years, too sensitive or intense, and without strong inner affirmation, these words don't feel like compliments. They feel like quiet accusations. As a result, INFJs often soften their edges, turn down the volume on their insight, and question their instincts. Their brilliance becomes buried under layers of emotional camouflage. INFJs also carry a kind of metaphysical loneliness that is difficult to articulate, because they see patterns where others see chaos, and because they care about things most people dismiss, they often feel existentially separate. They can love deeply and still feel unseen. They can be surrounded by people and still feel unknown. This aloneness is not from lack of effort. It's from the rarity of their perspective. And when you are rare, you are often misunderstood. Repeated misunderstanding can distort even the clearest self-image. It's not that INFJs don't have a mirror. It's that the mirror often shows a warped reflection, shaped by a world that doesn't know how to interpret depth without drama. INFJs are like lighthouses who don't know they're shining because they are too focused on the storm. They think their job is just to survive the wind, when in fact their very existence is guiding others home. Their journey is not to become something new, but to unearth what has always been true, that they are seers and healers. They are blind to their gifts because they've spent so long using them for others, forgetting that those same gifts are meant to illuminate them, too. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video.